Are you tired? Because we literally just got started.
What is an adventure?
I'm not answering that. What is an adventure?
Come
What
on.
would one define as an adventure?
Exactly.
A memory made. A trip on a little rocket ship
Little yellow submarine.
going through the stars.
Okay, okay. I don't know, I don't know. I feel like there's some elements that are required for adventure.
Like,
Some element of risk. hmm Um, a little bit of hardship, you know. Something new out of your comfort zone.
some people will get hurt. Some bonds will be built. Some memories made.
Exactly.
It sounds so cheesy.
Are you telling me you don't want to go on one
I
though?
do want to go on an adventure, but it just sounds so cheesy when you describe it, what it is, compared to what it actually is.
At this, I
A
mean,
journey in which you'll learn more about yourself, uncover secrets of the world, and find out what you're truly made of.
that's what's gonna happen though. You know?
All right, I think of this. All right, I like adventures. Definitely memories made. Definitely risk taken out of your comfort zone. I think of it more like an opportunity for an experience
Hmm.
beyond ourselves, even better with those around us.
Okay. I don't disagree. You know? That's essentially what I said.
Is that what you said?
It's basically what I
Is that
said.
what you said?
It's basically the same.
We will learn more about ourselves.
I mean, you
And
will,
we will
whether you're.
discover the true meaning behind friendship.
I
Sounds like
mean,
Mr. Hanky.
gosh, he's been on an adventure. He didn't even go anywhere. But you know, it's a process. You know, in which you're learning things, not just about yourself and your friends and whatnot, but you know about other places, other people. You know, like you're discovering something, even if it's not. It doesn't have to be like a long lost tomb that you're, you know, discovering for the first time. It's just something new to you. A discovery. Mm-mm.
What was the adventure thing that you liked as a kid? Like when I was younger, I used to love Star Wars,
Mm.
Indiana Jones,
Mm.
things like that.
Mm.
Batman, Spider Man, superheroes.
Mm.
There was definitely shows like adventures based, like Danny Phantom, things like that. Fighting different
Mm.
spirits, journeys. Lord of the Rings, one of them.
Definitely.
One of the major adventure types.
I liked Lord of the Rings, Naruto.
Naruto,
Um,
Dragon Ball Z.
mm, not for not for my artistic sensibilities. I know. youthful youthful me was not into it. But I like the premise of kind of having to improve yourself and, you know, finding enjoyment, finding good aspects, good moments, good memories in this otherwise difficult situation. Also, you know, just being out in nature. I liked that. You know, and I mean, you asked me why. Why does a lot of fantasy adventures always be portrayed
In medieval times?
Yeah,
Why is it never a modern time adventure?
because it doesn't look the same.
It doesn't look the same, but it could still function the same if done correctly. Like,
Perhaps, but it just doesn't have the same. Like, there's
aesthetic.
something peaceful about it. There's something really natural about being in nature.
It's like you find elves in the wood, not in Brooklyn.
Exactly. Like, there's something off here. There's something. Like, fantasy creatures. You associate them more with Earth. Because they're almost more animal. And we like to think ourselves modern and, civilized. And there's an association with civilization with big metropolitan city rather than a village. There's something more. What kind of hovel did you crawl out of? Kind of barbaric.
Nature of it.
Yeah.
Less technology, more focus on people, individuals, who makes it more adventurous. But most of those times, alright, so adventure stories are always in medieval times, kingdoms and, different families, different
Warlords.
kingdoms fighting each other,
Yeah.
peasants, soldiers, knights, warlocks, mages. It's always the same, like elf, dwarf, fairies, monsters, werewolves, whichever part, orcs, goblins, whatever's part of
That
the
kind of
universe.
falls under the monster category.
I'm just saying, like, there's specific kinds of monsters too, which is what's
I
crazy
know.
about it. And
There's
it's
so
like,
many.
most of that, I read that, most of that story type, most of that archetype came from J.R.R. Tolkien. Lord of the Rings is what
Yes.
started that.
That was one of the
And
first.
then everybody just started basing it off that type of world, that type of perspective.
Right.
I'm not saying that it will work the same in a modern society. I just wonder how come it's never established in a modern society.
Jujutsu Kaisen. Sort of.
I'm not caught up.
My bad. Anyway.
Weekend adventure. I'm just saying, I wondered why it was never set in modern times.
Uh-huh.
You know what's crazy? So, there was a Final Fantasy game that came out years ago, and that shit sucked.
Damn.
And I was really excited for it, and I played it, and I finished it, and platinumed it, and I did not like it at the end, because I was like, this was a whack adventure. And what's crazy about it was that it was a fantasy world set in modern times.
Right.
But then the new one, which was more favored, more popular, obviously different, formatted different characters, was set in more medieval times.
It's because we don't have that kind of adventurer occupation
Anymore.
and so it feels weird to have it in our scape. It feels more believable to have it in a worldscape that is removed
Makes more sense for a knight to travel around on a horse than a guy to ride around city to city.
because we don't have knights. We have soldiers,
In
sure,
the military.
but it's a very different concept of military man.
You know what I thought of? This is a similar thought as well. It's like the times of knights and Vikings and samurais. They were obviously different periods of history. Some of them correlated, some of them were a bit separate. But during each period in time, it was most relevant. It fit into the society that it belonged in. It was part of the culture. Then obviously more traditional technology came through, Industrial Revolution. The world started to come, instead of like being divided by nations, it was through states and continents, things like that. And just the people itself evolved over time that they didn't have to rely on such archetypes. But now you live in a society, there are no knights, there are no people following a certain set of moral codes. Not many people live in like traditional households where it's like, the lord, the lady of the house, the kids, farm works, things like that. There's definitely a variety. I want to know the transition, like who became whom in our modern society. Like what would be considered a knight errant in our modern society? What would be considered a samurai in our modern society?
It's not comparable.
It's not.
Because samurai, just the effort is not the same. The goal is not the same. I think the closest to samurai would be Yakuza. But even then, that's only because of the principle that they hold.
The values that they follow.
Right. People, like, the effort that it takes to wield a sword, you're going to be training for years. Not to say that, to shoot a rifle, whatever, all of our modern warfare does require skill, does require practice, and, we still need strategy and so forth, but it's not the same amount of dedication and time. It's just not the same. We make things very convenient for ourselves as we progress as a community, as a society. That is the goal of everything we make, to make it easier. We don't have there's just not a lot of occupations that require the same level of effort as anyone is really willing to put in. We still have some blacksmiths, we still have some craftsmen, but not a lot of people with all of the connectivity we have in the world and all of the separate entertainment and things that we can do with our time. No one's really putting their entire day into learning something in the way that they used to, because what else are you gonna do? Like,
that's what you mean, limited trades.
Yeah, there's limited trades, and I mean, even if you weren't limited in trade, your pastimes were more limited. You got up, if you were a farmer, then you tended the land. That's what you did. That's what you practiced. You got home at the end of the day. That was your life. If you're in a samurai family, you get up, you learn the way of the sword. Whatever you're doing, you're going to be groomed for that lifestyle. For that trade.
That reminds me though, certain people also do that now. And let's say, like, some family will be, let's say they work in the entertainment industry, and one of them is an entertainment lawyer, and they'll train their children, or they'll push their children to follow a similar suit, or they own a business, so they teach their children how to run that business, how to run a similar business,
right? So
that when they're gone, they replace them.
What comes to mind are fishermen or lobstermen.
Lobstermen.
I watched a video recently, and that kind of runs in the family too, where it's like you go out on the boat. A lot of people have that. If their parents have an occupation or a business, you kind of get grandfathered in. But I still hold to the fact that there's still just not that same dedication. Because even if you grow up within a family that has this trade that they're doing and you're going to do too, we have more sources of distraction. Back in the way olden days, before TV, if you were going to see a performance, like the circus, that's a one-off thing. You're not doing that every night. You're not doing that every day. You may not even be able to do it every year.
When they're in town.
Right. It's a special occasion to have the luxury of entertainment. It's not a luxury now. It is still, but it's not treated as such.
No.
It is a given. That is how we unwind at the end of the day. This is how it's very integral to people's everyday. And it takes up a lot of time.
It's funny you said that. That's a thought I had the other day. I was reading an article about, like the boomer pharmacists retiring, and a lot of the newer generations, they're going to be the ones replacing them.
Right.
So let's say, for example, millennials, Gen Zs, eventually the people retire, and then once they reach the end of their life, they pass, things like that. We're going to be the ones stepping up. We're going to be the ones handling that type of business. The article was discussing about the difference between then and now.
Mm.
How then it was dedicated research, a lot more put into the education, but like you said, it was less distractions. So really, you had to focus on what you were doing. Less access to information, so it was a bit of a more struggle.
Mm.
Now more people have opportunities, depending on the situation of the person, but most people are given the chance to go to school, get college education, do more research, be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Their concern was the later generations won't be as dedicated, as knowledgeable, or as, let's say, capable of handling such businesses.
I agree.
Some people could, some people cannot.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that affect society as a whole? When the people, the true professionals that have been doing it for years, go away, retire, transition to those that you've been using ChatGPT to figure out what every medication is containing.
There's no pride in profession. Like, if you're someone who's put in time and energy into learning your craft, you are dedicated to it. You have pride. You're like, I know my stuff. I know my worth. This is what I do. This is part of my identity. People don't really associate it that much. I think younger generations are moving more towards, this is my job. This is how I make money. I do my job. I go home. That's it. There's a very distinct line. And I think that's good for work-life balance, but at the same time, it lends into that realm where we're not really putting in the dedication to be masters of what we do. Now, granted, a lot of jobs are just filler jobs. We make jobs to give people money. That's
support
a lot.
The community, opportunities, things like that.
Right. They're really not functioning as anything, but for people who have jobs that do require nuance and continued education and learning, it's an easy way out. I mean, back when you had to really work to graduate. I hate to say it because we're both graduates, but that shit was easy.
It was a bit easy, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't as tough as I thought it was going to be.
I mean, researching for papers were harder in middle school and high school than it was in college, and I think that's not the boon that people presume it to be.
I also feel like, though, at least in my opinion, the classes I took was more basic level.
Mm-hmm.
It was never into the deeper expertise.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to go to master's school or graduate school and focus on that same field, then maybe I'm going to have to put in a little bit more dedication, thesis paper,
Right.
look into research, conduct research, and things like that. But since I just got the bachelor's, that was pretty much just handling, I think of it more as like the gen ed version of it. You completed the gen ed, and then if you want to get your master's, that's when you're really going to have to focus in, because you won't be distracted with statistics or English or things like that. It's going to be whatever course you're in, whatever field you're in. It's economics, it's the economics of a city, of a society, of a corporation, psychology, child psychology, psychopathy, and then you further on move forward into that specific field. That's when you get more educated.
What does that say about the value of the degree?
Gee, that's tough, man.
Because that makes it seem like we're elongating basic education.
Some
rather
people
than
do need elongated basic education. Not
That's-
everyone, but some.
I
Because
feel
there are
like
still some factors. There's still some factors of undergrad that still play the implemental factor, like implemental role.
true, but at what point in that undergrad do you need to flip the switch and be like, okay, but you need to be able to write your own essay without going into chat GPT.
Yeah,
You know?
I wrote my essays alone.
Good for you. So did I. I still looked up some of the citations, but and that's kind of the thing. You don't have to keep that knowledge in your head. But I mean, the number of times my mom will tell me about how she had to go into the file to look up books and things for references for her things, Whereas we can go into the thing and search through the entire text for certain information.
Just read the abstract, and then we have everything we need.
Exactly. We have it much easier, even if we still have to put in some work, it's not the same. It's not the same.
There was this one time in sophomore year, U.S. history class. I remember my teacher gave us an assignment. We had to go to the library,
Mm-hmm.
write down which library we went to, and write down like the code, like the information that the library put for the book itself.
Uh-huh.
And we have to read the book. I can't remember what it was called. It's not Animal Farm. It's I remember the pretty much the basis of it was about the bad conditions for workers in like a meat factory.
Okay.
And it was pretty much like a fictional expose about how dangerous the field is, how reckless it is.
Mm.
And I remember either it started or it helped create the USDA. Like it was like people were being very reckless with the meats, that people would get sick and things like that.
I mean, still the case, it's not really doing much good, but that's another topic.
That's another topic on its own. But I remember going to the library, doing the research, reading the book. I didn't read the whole thing, but I read like a good few chapters just to get the gist of what I'm talking about, what I was reading. And my teacher was very impressed by it because not a lot of people did it. A lot of the classmates bullshitted it. But I remember thinking like, damn, this is actually like how they had to do it back then. This is what they had to do. They had to go to the library, find the readings. And you will see even crazier. Imagine a period in time in which that study has not been conducted. Imagine a period of time where that research have not been fully developed.
And you're looking through all these fucking books trying to find
and
information.
you're just trying to figure out like where am I supposed to get this information from because nobody did the research on that. You know, Freud is talking about why everything in your dreams is involving sex. Pavlov's trying to figure out why your dog keeps drooling. And it's like, I'm trying to figure out why this little kid keeps kicking me in my ankles. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's even crazier. And imagine all the studies that we have not been able, better yet, all the data we have not been able to find yet because of the research that's being conducted now. And then, mind you,
but then
research back then was a lot more riskier too.
Sure.
So I always found that crazy how like it's crazy how limiting it is, and that limit stops us from getting a certain amount of knowledge, but that limit also stops us from doing a certain amount of damage too.
The research in and of itself is a gray area because you have to do some morally questionable and potentially
follow such a strict guideline too.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating work. I wonder how dedicated our research in the future will be with people finding so many shortcuts. I think that's what I find concerning. A lot of people wanting shortcuts.
That's interesting though. If you can find the shortcut,
is it worth it though? Is the shortcut worth it?
Does it deter the data that's being collected? Does it deter what you find?
You know, sometimes.
Like if you travel the woods and you walk around the entire woods, but then someone follows a specific path and still ends up discovering the same temple, the same area you do.
It's the question of, is it the journey or the destination?
Definitely the journey.
It's the journey. So take the long route. You know, do you prefer your mom's cooking or do you want to just buy it from the store?
Buy it from the store.
Bullshit.
So much faster.
It's so much faster, but does it taste as good?
Yes.
Do you still get the same enjoyment?
Yes. When you're hungry, anything tastes good.
Yeah, hunger is the best seasoning.
I see the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
The longer route is the better route. That's actually something I've been trying to remind myself too, with changes in career and life path, because a lot of people do shortcuts, but the longer route typically is the route that most people, successful people, have taken to reach the point that they're at.
Because they learn more than just the piece of information that they're looking for.
There's more experience too.
There's more experience. There's more appreciation for what you learn as well, you know, and you learn, cheesy, I know, but you learn a lot about yourself, you know.
When you go on an adventure and you make new friends.
Exactly, you learn so much about what you're capable of, because I think that that's also a factor in how we develop as humans. Because if we're not pushed, then we almost go into a place of helplessness. Like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. You know? If we constantly are not pushed to take the long route, figure it out.
Take the risk.
Right. You know, you're going to be in a place where you're not able to. You develop critical thinking and resourcefulness.
You know what you just reminded me of? I remember reading this article talking about the cycles between peace and war, and how peace.
So only as long as your memory.
True. Peace, a long time of peace would eventually lead to people being, I guess you could say, too soft or incapable of defending themselves against those who are more hostile, which forces those people to learn how to fight back, leading to war, and then war leads to defeat of the hostile enemy, whichever side you're on, and then after the war ends, you find a period of peace, and over time that peace leads the generations to becoming capable of fighting the hostile power, and they're forced to fight, restarting the cycle, and it goes on and on and on.
Right.
And I think to myself about that as well, what you just said, like incapable, the critical thinking, the resourcefulness. When you live an experience, let's say for example, your family grew up in poverty, and then your mother, your father, they dedicated themselves to a field, a career, a path. They started businesses, they got a good job. They're able to support for those families. From there, the children are given opportunities that they weren't given to. Private schools, college education, networking, opportunities to career paths that weren't given before. Will those kids be as capable of handling their responsibility, even though they didn't have to struggle as hard? Now, after that generation, will the next generation be able to handle it? Because this generation, first generation grew up poor and poverty, second generation grew up middle class, third generation growing up wealthy. Now will the cycle fall, start over? Where does it end? Where does it lead to?
It's the same as the war and peace cycle, where you have it's only as long as the human memory. You know, the people that can hold on to the memory of the past struggles will retain some of those values, skills. This reminds me of cooking. I'm not trying to throw shade here.
Yeah, sure.
You can make toast.
Damn good one.
I know. But the number of people, young people, that I've met, lived with, that don't know how to cook. Basic cooking. And I don't mean taking a frozen dinner and putting it in the microwave, alright?
Like real cooking.
Real cooking. Seasoning,
up,
real
frying.
Ingredients. Fresh ingredients. And not only know how to cook, but know how to plan out your meals. As in, no, you're not looking up a recipe and then going to the store and buying each one of those ingredients, and then you never know how to use the rest of what you have left over. I mean, making a list, getting those ingredients, and finding out what you can make with those ingredients for the entirety of the week. You know, actually being able to plan out your meals. That self-sufficiency, gone.
It's crazy you say that. I got family that are amazing cooks. And I always found this crazy that they wouldn't plan out what they were cooking. They would just either think about it the day before,
see what you
or
have
in the morning. They'll look at what they have and they'll make something crazy, something incredible off what they just had in the kitchen. And it's like the top of their head. And they don't need like the recipe book. They just remember instinctually.
It's a skill.
What they make.
Yeah. And that only comes with practice too. You know? And that's a skill I find more... Actually, I can't really attribute it to poverty or wealth. I think that's just kind of a lifestyle, because I think it's, if you've been in a more rural area, I think that's a little bit more common, you know, because food deserts, so on and so forth. You have what you have, you know. Um, but that's a resourcefulness. That's a skill that you learn, and young people don't seem to learn it. And it's like they're so proud of it too. That's what kills me, because I'm like, wow, it's like a symbol of I have enough. I don't need to cook for myself. You know.
Hold on.